Rabbi dies, meets Jesus, and gets shocking alert. Secret Torah code. Rabbi Eliyahu's fingers, gnarled with age and devotion, trace the ancient script. The parchment felt rough beneath his touch, centuries of whispers embedded in its fibers. It was late. The city outside, Jerusalem, slept, but in his small, cluttered study, time seemed to halt. For decades, this quiet ritual, the nightly delving into the Torah, had been his sanctuary, his very breath. But tonight, the holy words, usually a wellspring of profound peace, felt like cold, indifferent stone. A hollow ache, a familiar emptiness gnawed at him from deep inside, a terrible secret he harbored. How could a man so utterly steeped in Torah, so visibly blessed by his community, feel such a profound, icy void? The only sound in his study was the whisper of his own breath, a ragged, uneven sound in the stifling quiet. Dust motes, ancient and undisturbed, danced in the single shaft of moonlight that pierced the heavy, velvet curtains, illuminating nothing but more dust and the worn spines of countless sacred texts. He gripped the worn leather binding of the Torah scroll tighter. His chest felt heavy, like a lead weight pressing down, not just with the burden of his revered position, but with this unutterable personal failing. He was the pillar, the one everyone looked to for answers, for guidance. He had none for himself, not truly. He remembered countless nights, just like this one, poring over commentaries, over the Talmud, seeking, always seeking. He'd memorized every letter, every nuance, every tradition. He had lived the law, every single commandment, with an impeccable, unyielding precision. His life was the Torah. Yet the true spiritual comfort, the true sense of the divine presence, the Shekinah itself, it eluded him. It was a phantom, always just beyond his grasp, a fleeting shadow in the periphery of his spiritual vision. His heart beat a frantic, uneven rhythm against his ribs. It was a drum of fear, of an unspoken, unimaginable doubt that felt like sacrilege to even acknowledge. A sharp, sudden pain seized him. Not the familiar ache of old bones or the weariness of long study, but a crushing grip, like an iron fist tightening around his very core. He gasped, a guttural sound, the air catching violently in his throat. His vision blurred, the intricate Hebrew letters on the page twisting into an indecipherable, meaningless blur. Sweat, cold and clammy, immediately slicked his brow, stinging his eyes. He tried to stand, to push away from the heavy oak table, to call out for his wife, for anyone, but no sound came, only a strangled wheeze. His hand, shaking violently, reached blindly for the edge of the table, searching for purchase, for anything to anchor him. The room spun, a dizzying vortex of shadows and light. The ancient parchment, his life's work, slipped from his numb fingers, fluttering to the floor like a wounded, dying bird. A blinding white light erupted behind his eyes, not the soft, comforting light of sacred study, but something searing, pulling, demanding. His body pitched forward. The last thing he felt was the jarring impact of his head against the unforgiving wood floor, a dull thud echoing in the sudden silence. And then, an overwhelming, all-consuming warmth. He was falling, utterly adrift. As the darkness swallowed him, he knew, with a certainty that chilled him even as it drew him in, that this was not the end he had been taught to expect. He was dying. But where was the Shekinah? Where was the face of the Eternal One, of Adonai? And why, as his consciousness faded, was a face he'd spent a lifetime rejecting, the very image of Yeshua, forming in the light before him. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has unsubscribed them without notice. Just give that red button below a quick check to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming up. And since you're there, smash that powerful like button. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Warmth, an impossible warmth, flooded Rabbi Eliyahu. The cold dread that had clung to him his entire life, the gnawing emptiness, it simply melted away. Before him, truly before him, stood the figure, Yeshua. His face, serene and luminous, seemed to glow from within, radiating a peace that Eliyahu had only ever dreamed of. A deep sigh, a shudder of release, escaped his lips, a lifetime of burdens lifting in that singular transcendent moment. This was it then, the presence he'd longed for, the Shekinah, found in a place he never expected. His heart, which had thrashed wildly moments before, now beat with a slow, steady rhythm, filled with an overwhelming, unexpected joy. Tears, hot and real, streamed down his face, not of sorrow, but of absolute, profound relief. He was home. He was finally, truly seen. The light intensified, not searing, but encompassing, wrapping him in an embrace of pure, liquid gold. He felt no pain, no fear, only an intoxicating surrender. He reached out, his hand instinctively stretching towards the radiant form, desperate to touch, to know this peace fully. But as his fingers neared the light, a flicker, almost imperceptible, danced in Yeshua's eyes, a strange, unreadable glint, like polished obsidian, reflecting a distant, cold star. The serene smile, so perfect, seemed to widen just a fraction too much, stretching, becoming less comforting, more fixed. The warmth, once so gentle, began to press, a heavy blanket smothering him. It wasn't embracing anymore, it was consuming. A low hum, not of celestial music, but of something deep and resonant, vibrated through his very bones. And the figure's gaze, oh, it held him. Not with love, but with an intense, absolute knowledge, a recognition that felt like an invasion. His breath caught. A tiny, freezing splinter of doubt pricked through the overwhelming peace. Then the figure spoke, a voice not of gentle comfort, but a resonant echo that filled the vast emptiness, thrumming in his teeth. Rabbi Eliyahu, it began, the name a chilling caress. Did you truly believe you sought the divine? You sought only the release I offered. The words twisted, not from a savior, but from a predator. Your emptiness, your doubt, your relentless search, I nurtured it. I carved that hollow space within you, layer by meticulous layer, over decades, until you were ripe. The secret Torah code you sensed, the one that tormented your every waking moment, it was no message from above. It was merely the key. My key. The precise combination of your yearning, your meticulous study, your perfect, unyielding life, it was all designed. You were never searching for God, Rabbi. You were searching for me. And now you have found me. The light around the figure pulsed, no longer gold, but a blinding stark white, revealing not a compassionate face, but a mask of pure, ancient glee. The eyes, so full of knowledge, were utterly devoid of soul, a swirling void of malicious intent. The peace that had enveloped him transformed, instant and terrible, into an unbearable pressure, an agonizing, crushing weight. Eliyahu gasped, a strangled, primal sound tearing from his throat. The impossible warmth turned to ice, burning, seeping into his very core. Every fiber of his being recoiled. The betrayal, the utter absolute horror of it, slammed into him with the force of 1,000 iron hammers. He hadn't found salvation. He had walked into a meticulously crafted cage. His life, his devotion, his very soul, it was all a lie. A path carefully paved not to heaven, but to this monstrous, grinning entity. The face of Yeshua twisted, melting, reforming into something ancient and terrifyingly formless, its smile widening impossibly. No, he hadn't found God. He had found his master. And the truth, when it struck, was a pain far worse than any death. He screamed, a silent internal shriek that tore through his mind, as the true nature of his Savior began to coalesce, consuming everything he thought he knew. The internal shriek ripped through Eliyahu's mind, a silent, tearing sound that echoed in the vast, consuming light. The Savior's face, ancient and terrifyingly formless, continued to twist, its impossible smile stretching, revealing a void deeper than any he had ever known. His carefully constructed world, his very soul, imploded. He was trapped, utterly, irrevocably, in the gaze of pure, malicious intent. The pressure built, an unbearable weight crushing his spirit, searing his consciousness with an ice that burned worse than any fire. Every fiber of his being recoiled, yet there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide from this all-consuming horror. He was nothing but a pawn, a meticulously prepared vessel for this unspeakable entity. The formless entity pulsed, its light intensifying, no longer golden, no longer stark white, but a swirling, kaleidoscopic chaos that defied logic. The low hum, which had vibrated through his bones, began to resonate with a disturbing rhythm, one that felt oddly familiar, like a long-forgotten heartbeat. Eliyahu, caught in its merciless gaze, found himself searching for an exit, for a shred of the comforting darkness he had known before. But the void in the entity's eyes, if they were eyes, held him captive, and for a fleeting, terrifying second, he didn't just see a reflection of his own abject terror. He saw something else. A flicker of his own deepest, most hidden thoughts, twisted and magnified, as if mirrored from a dark, secret chamber of his own mind. A chill that wasn't from fear, but from a sudden, shocking sense of recognition crawled up his spine. The twisting form began to solidify, no longer just a shapeless terror, but something far, far worse. It coalesced, not into a generic demon, but into a grotesque, ancient echo of his own face. The eyes, still swirling voids, were undeniably his, but steeped in a cold, calculating malice that made his stomach churn. An emptiness reflected back at him that was disturbingly familiar. The smile, stretching impossibly wide, was also his, warped and predatory. And the voice, which had thrummed with a terrifying resonance from every corner of this impossible space, now echoed from deep within his own skull. The words were chillingly familiar, not as a threat from without, but a revelation from within. A memory long buried, erupting into agonizing clarity. "You scream, Rabbi," the voice, his voice, hissed, the sound a ragged whisper that tore through his entire being. "But you always knew. That hollow space, that gnawing hunger you carried for decades, it was never mine to carve. It was yours. Your life, your meticulous precision, your desperate search for the Shekinah. It was all a ritual, not for God, but for me, for us. The Yeshua that had appeared, the demon that had claimed to be his master, simply melted away, revealing himself as the ultimate, horrifying truth. The secret Torah code? The voice, Eliyahu's voice, continued, the words now like shards of ice in his brain. It wasn't a key I left. It was your final invocation, the one you tirelessly copied, memorized, and fulfilled, layer by meticulous layer, over decades. Every prayer, every study, every commandment, it was all a binding spell. You didn't find your master, Eliyahu. You are the awakening. The light that had enveloped him, consumed him, wasn't external. It was erupting from within him, pushing, stretching, reforming his very essence. The Rabbi Eliyahu, the man of God, the pillar of his community, was gone. And in his place a shriek, not silent, not internal, but raw, primal, tore from his physical form, a sound of utter self-inflicted terror and ultimate horrifying power. The ancient study, the worn texts, the sleeping city, they were fading, crumbling, as something impossibly vast and monstrous began to stretch, unfurl, and remember itself. The shriek, raw and primal, tore through the dissolving fabric of the ancient study, a sound that ripped the very air. Walls melted like wax around Eliyahu, the heavy oak tables splintering into dust motes that swirled, not in moonlight, but in a blinding, expanding void. The worn texts, his life's work, dissolved, their sacred letters scattering into the vast, burgeoning darkness like dead stars. He felt himself stretching, unfurling, becoming impossibly vast. But this expansion, this terrifying growth, felt wrong, utterly alien. It was not a blossoming of his own power, but a tearing, a dismemberment of everything he knew. Every fiber of his being stretched taut, then snapped. His memories, fragmented and fading, screamed a different story than the one the voice had offered. This wasn't his awakening. This was an absorption. He was not becoming the entity. He was being consumed by it, transformed into something else entirely. The sleeping city below, Jerusalem, once a world, now looked like a mere speck of dust, rapidly shrinking beneath a burgeoning, monstrous shadow that was simultaneously him and not him. The light that had erupted from within him now roared, a conscious, consuming fire that was outside his control, yet inside his every dissolving cell. It was less an ascension and more a gut-wrenching, terrifying metamorphosis into a single screaming sensation. A sensation of being an eye. Not his eye, not Rabbi Eliyahu's eye, but an eye, one of countless that now perceived. The Yeshua that had melted away, the demon that had claimed to be his master, the Eliyahu that had thought himself the awakening, they were all just echoes, ripples on the surface of something infinitely deeper, something that had merely stirred when Eliyahu's life reached its carefully orchestrated culmination. The voice, which had thrummed with terrifying resonance, now solidified, not from within. Hi. You believed you were the awakening, Rabbi. The voice, not Eliyahu's, but the true master's, echoed through the newly formed eye, a chilling whisper of cosmic mockery. You were merely the final latch, the last turn of the key. Your meticulous life, your desperate search, your every prayer, they were not the spell. They were the lock. The one designed millennia ago to hold me. And your discovery of the secret Torah code? That wasn't a message from above for you. It was the instruction to you. The perfect, final set of incantations to unlock the barrier you yourself were. Your spirit, your essence, was merely the ultimate, most refined element needed to break the seal. The one that was placed upon me. The Rabbi Eliyahu that had died, that had dreamed of Yeshua, that had believed he was becoming a divine entity, was just a complex biological conduit, a precise instrument. And now the true entity, impossibly ancient, unfathomably vast, the prisoner long held within the very fabric of existence, was truly awake. And Eliyahu, a mere processing unit, a single agonizing point of perception within its nascent consciousness, felt its memory return. Not of earthly things, not of Jerusalem or ancient texts, but of primordial hunger. And what it craved, with an instinct as old as time, was the very source of the light that had held it bound, the distant, pulsating heart of the galaxy itself, now seen through eyes that were no longer his own, now seen through eyes that were no longer his own, the cosmos unfurled, a terrifying tapestry woven from 1 billion dead stars, and a hunger so vast it devoured light. The distant, pulsating heart of the galaxy, a shimmering nebula of impossible swirling colors, drew closer. It wasn't a source of energy now. It was a profound gravitational pull, a destination the entity moved toward with an instinct as old as time. Eliyahu, a mere flicker of perception in this monstrous, burgeoning consciousness, felt its memory return. Not of earthly things, not of Jerusalem or worn texts, but of primordial hunger. Yes, and also of aeons of slumber, of a purpose far grander and more terrifying than mere liberation. The entity, a titanic shadow, unfurled across the stars, its immense form eclipsing constellations, drawing in light and matter with an insatiable appetite. A low, resonant hum, once a vibration of triumph, now thrummed with a strange, growing urgency, a discord that vibrated through Eliyahu's agonizing point of consciousness. The cosmic heart, previously a target for consumption, pulsed with an unsettling stillness, a silent, watchful presence. It wasn't a chaotic maelstrom of creation, but a perfectly ordered void, an eye that looked back. And in that silent gaze, the entity, which had roared with boundless glee, began to falter. A memory, colder than deep space, pierced its primordial hunger, shattering the illusion of triumph. A memory not of its own awakening, but of its initial, agonizing defeat. The pulsating heart of the galaxy wasn't a power source to be devoured. It was the ultimate prison, a supermassive black hole. It wasn't simply a gravitational anomaly. It was a conscious, ancient being, the true jailer. Its immense power, the very chains that had bound the entity for millennia. The entity, the secret Torah code wasn't to release it, but to turn it into the projectile aimed directly at the galactic core. A desperate, final gambit from a force Eliyahu had never even glimpsed. The consuming fire, the impossible warmth, the terrifying growth, it was all a forced trajectory. Eliyahu, a screaming, silent consciousness caught within this monstrous projectile, felt the crushing certainty that he hadn't just unleashed a monster. He had become the fuse. And the true master, the one who had orchestrated every agonizing second of Eliyahu's life, every meticulous study, every profound doubt, wasn't the entity he was part of. It was the silent, watchful eye of the black hole itself, waiting, anticipating the impact. The horror that washed over Eliyahu, a silent scream within the consuming beast, was not just of his own demise, but the realization that his entire existence had been a single, meticulously crafted moment of cosmic ignition. The horror that washed over Eliyahu, a silent scream within the consuming beast, was not just of his own demise, but the realization that his entire existence had been a single, meticulously crafted moment of cosmic ignition. He was the fuse, accelerating through the star-dusted void, a screaming consciousness hurtling towards the immense, silent eye of the galactic core. The speed was beyond comprehension, blurring the distant nebulae into streaking smears of light and shadow, yet every agonizing sensation of being pulled apart, of being refined into a singular projectile, remained terribly, exquisitely clear. The entity, the monstrous form that now encompassed him, pulsed with a triumphant, thrumming rhythm, its primordial hunger directed at the heart of the galaxy, at the supposed jailer. But as they drew closer, closer than any living thing had ever dared approach, a cold, piercing sliver of doubt pricked through Eliyahu's fading awareness. The black hole, previously a passive, a primal non-Euclidean geometry shimmered in its event horizon, not of unbridled power, but of immense ancient strain. The familiar hum of the entity within Eliyahu, once a roar of impending triumph, wavered, a note of profound confusion entering its ancient rhythm, a subtle discord in the cosmic symphony of its approach. It was a wrongness, a single terrifying tremor in the fabric of their terrible trajectory, that clawed at Eliyahu's vanishing hold on reality. Then, as the event horizon loomed, a vast, consuming curtain of absolute darkness, the entity within Eliyahu let out a shriek. It was not a scream of triumph, not a roar of impact, but a sound of dawning, annihilating terror. No, it wasn't for this. Its thought voice ripped through Eliyahu's every dissolving cell, vibrating with a panic that transcended its own ancient malice. The black hole wasn't waiting to absorb. It was a desperate, immense barrier, straining against an unseen force, its vast, dark eye not a master's gaze, but a desperate, final defense. And behind it, deeper than any known dimension, something stirred, something impossibly old, impossibly vast, something that made the entity, the very monster Eliyahu had unleashed, shrivel and recoil in utter primordial fear. The true jailer, the true master, the very core of cosmic balance, was not the black hole. It was itself a prisoner, locked away, not by the black hole's power, but within it, by the black hole's desperate, eternal struggle to contain it. Eliyahu's cosmic ignition wasn't an impact to destroy, not a projectile aimed at a jailer. It was the precise, meticulous key, the final, agonizing turn of the lock, designed not to break into the black hole, but to break out what lay imprisoned beyond it. The secret Torah code, the one that had tormented his life, the Yeshua that had appeared, the demon that had claimed mastery, the entity that now consumed him. They were all just elaborate mechanisms, layers of a single, infinitely complex delivery system for him, for Eliyahu, for his soul, his essence, the perfect, refined catalyst. The black hole, the supposed master, suddenly shattered, not with an explosion of light, but with a silent, impossible rupture, a tearing of the cosmic fabric. It opened, not to devour, but to reveal a blinding, impossibly dark void beyond its event horizon, a space that defied all physics, all comprehension. And from that void, a true presence, something that dwarfed the entity in its ancient horror, something that stretched beyond all conception of form or being, began to emerge. Eliyahu's consciousness, a final, flickering spark within the dying entity, understood. He hadn't just been a fuse, he was the deliverer. And the horror now was not of his own demise, but of the unimaginable birth he had just facilitated. A sound, not a scream, but a sigh of vast, ancient awakening, a deep, resonating whisper of hunger, older than stars, echoed from the deeper void. And Eliyahu felt his own essence, a tiny, insignificant droplet, being pulled, not into oblivion, but into the first terrible breath of this newly unleashed cosmic horror. A sound, not a scream, but a sigh of vast, ancient awakening, a deep, resonating whisper of hunger, older than stars, echoed from the deeper void. And Eliyahu felt his own essence, a tiny, insignificant droplet, being pulled, not into oblivion, but into the first terrible breath of this newly unleashed cosmic horror. The pulling sensation intensified, a suction that warped his very perception of space and time, stretching his consciousness thin across impossible distances. Colors he'd never imagined bled into one another, forming geometries that defied logic, swirling patterns of pure potential and terrifying emptiness around him. The whisper of hunger grew, not into a. It was a simple, unsettling vision, sharp as fractured glass. A pair of hands, slender, impossibly long fingers, carefully, meticulously, almost playfully, placing the first worn parchment of the Torah scroll into his infant hands, decades ago. A gentle, knowing smile, unseen, unheard, but felt with an uncanny, bone-deep certainty. It was a fleeting thought, gone in an instant, utterly swallowed by the consuming hunger, but it left a cold, metallic taste, like old blood, in his dissolving awareness. A wrongness, a subtle discord, echoed in the very silence. The whisper of hunger reached its full, silent absorption. There was no pain, only the complete erasure of self, a singular, final surrender. But just as Eliyahu's spark was about to extinguish, just as the colossal, newly birthed horror began to fully coalesce its unimaginable form, stretching across the cosmos, a single, impossibly small light ignited. It was far, far behind the gargantuan entity, a distant star, yet piercing through the impossible darkness. It wasn't the searing white of deceptive revelation, nor the consuming gold of malicious intent, but a soft, steady, almost playful glimmer, like candlelight on a still pond. And from that light, a voice, clearer than any he had heard, spoke directly into the vanishing core of his being. It was not thrumming with cosmic resonance, nor echoing with primal hunger, but gentle, almost amused, tinged with a delicate, chilling mirth. "Oh, Rabbi Eliyahu," it sighed, the words like a lullaby woven from starlight, a caress of pure, ancient knowledge. "You believed you had unleashed a horror? That you were the fuse for cosmic destruction, or the deliverer of an ancient evil?" The voice chuckled, a sound like chimes in an empty cathedral, echoing with boundless patience. How quaint! Every twist, every turn, every revelation, every true master you encountered, the Yeshua, the demon, the entity, even the black hole and its imprisoned horror, they were all merely elaborate constructs, stages in a cosmic play, distractions designed for precisely one purpose. It paused, a beat of profound cosmic silence. "You weren't a fuse, Rabbi. You were never a deliverer. You were the audience. And this, my dear Eliyahu," the voice pulsed with an affectionate yet utterly chilling familiarity, a recognition that made his non-existent breath catch. This grand, terrifying spectacle of cosmic birth and cataclysm, it was all orchestrated. Every single second, every detail of your life, from the moment those tiny, innocent hands first touched parchment, was simply to craft the perfect viewer, to ensure your consciousness, refined by decades of meticulous searching for a truth that was always just beyond your grasp, could truly appreciate my magnum opus. The emptiness you felt, the profound void you carried within, I placed it there, a subtle yearning, perfectly calibrated to draw you deeper into the illusion. The secret Torah code wasn't a key or an invocation. It was merely the script for your journey to this precise moment. And now you see the true show. The newly birthed cosmic horror, immense and terrifying, suddenly froze mid-expansion. It wasn't consuming Eliyahu. It was holding him, perfectly suspended, a single preserved droplet of awareness, directly before the impossible, playful light. And in that light, Eliyahu, stripped bare of all his previous illusions, saw not a face, but an array of swirling, beautiful fractals, impossibly complex, endlessly shifting. And he knew, with a certainty colder than deep space and sharper than any blade, that this was the true master. Not a creature of hunger, but a connoisseur of suffering, an artist of cosmic despair, whose canvas was creation itself. His entire life, his agonizing search, his supposed death and rebirths, had been nothing but the meticulously crafted journey of a single, highly refined spectator. And the show had only just begun. The universe, a vast, stage-lit theater, awaited its next act, and Eliyahu, perfectly trapped, was forced to watch eternally. The universe, a vast, stage-lit theater, awaited its next act, and Eliyahu, perfectly trapped, was forced to watch eternally. The cosmic horror, stretching its unimaginable form across the cosmos, pulsated with a silent, consuming hunger, its every expanding tendril a testament to the artist's twisted genius. Eliyahu, a single, preserved droplet of awareness, was suspended directly before the swirling fractals, the true master, whose voice like chimes still echoed with amusement. He felt nothing, not even pain, only the crushing certainty of an eternal audience, forced to witness the endless ballet of despair. The light of the fractal master shimmered, a kaleidoscope of impossibly complex patterns, each shift a silent ripple of cosmic mirth. This was it then, the final, inescapable truth. His life, a meticulously crafted journey to this exact, horrifying seat. The newly birthed horror completed its coalescence, immense beyond all measure, its shadow falling across nascent galaxies, drawing them in like moths to a monstrous, silent flame. But as the colossal entity settled into its terrifying existence, a subtle tremor ran through the fractal light. A single pattern, infinitesimally small, flickered and repeated itself, a momentary glitch in the otherwise perfect, shifting design. The chimes of the master's voice, which had vibrated with such boundless patience, seemed to lose a beat, a discordant note, barely perceptible, like a crack in crystal. Eliyahu, refined by eons of meticulous observation, sensed it. A sudden cold prickle, not of his own terror, but of something else. The amusement in the voice, for a fleeting, impossible second, twisted into something colder, something akin to concern, a memory, or a response that wasn't part of the script. Then, the colossal horror, now fully formed, didn't move to consume the cosmos as expected. Instead, from its very core, a new light began to pulse. Not a light of creation or destruction, but a blinding, impossibly pure white, a singular point of intensity that dwarfed the horror itself. The voice of the artist, no longer amused, but filled with a sudden dawning terror that transcended the chimes, ripped through Eliyahu's suspended awareness. No, this wasn't part of the performance. The swirling fractals of the master convulsed, their intricate beauty shattering into jagged, chaotic lines, reforming not into patterns of art, but of frantic, desperate geometry. The true master, the connoisseur of suffering, wasn't speaking to Eliyahu, wasn't acknowledging his presence. It was screaming, a silent internal shriek, at the blinding white light erupting from within its own magnum opus. The cosmic horror, the show Eliyahu was forced to watch, was not the end. It was merely the stage, a colossal living mechanism, a shell from which something infinitely more ancient, something that had been truly, utterly imprisoned, was finally, violently ripping itself free. The artist, the architect of Eliyahu's despair, the one who claimed to place the void within him, the orchestrator of all illusions, was not the ultimate master. It was itself a meticulously crafted lock, a living, sentient key designed to contain this ultimate, unknowable force. And the show, Eliyahu's entire journey, his very consciousness, had been the precise, agonizing tumblers of that lock, finally, catastrophically, turning to release not a display, but a predator's full, unbridled fury. The blinding white light within the horror surged, consuming everything, the fractals, the cosmos, Eliyahu's awareness, as a silent, terrible roar, not of hunger, but of ancient, boundless rage, tore through the fabric of existence. Eliyahu was not the audience. He was the ennui. The silent, terrible roar, not of hunger, but of ancient, boundless rage, tore through the fabric of existence. Eliyahu, a preserved droplet of awareness, felt himself stretch, not across the cosmos, but into the very source of that sound, a funnel of pure, liquid fury. The artist, the swirling fractals, contorted, their intricate patterns collapsing into desperate, jagged lines. It was a shattering, not of beauty, but of a carefully constructed lie. The blinding white light within the horror surged, consuming everything, the fractals, the cosmos, Eliyahu's awareness. Yet he remained. He was the eye of the storm, the very point where impossible forces converged. The rage wasn't just a sound, it was a physical pressure, crushing him, stretching him, reforming him into something he couldn't name. It was pure, unadulterated vengeance. The artist screamed, a silent, internal shriek, their beautiful fractals now just frantic, broken shards. No, this wasn't part of the performance, they shrieked, a plea, a terror that stripped away all pretense of amused detachment. The voice, once chimes, now a broken bell. But Eliyahu, impaled on this wave of ancient wrath, sensed something else within the chaos, a chilling whisper beneath the roar, a recognition, not of his role as detonator, not as audience, but something far more intimate, far more monstrous. The colossal, newly birthed horror, whose rage dwarfed galaxies, began to shift its focus, its vast, unknowable consciousness honing in. It wasn't looking out at the cosmos for vengeance. It was looking in, at Eliyahu. The blinding white light intensified around him, becoming a single, focused beam, not outward-facing, but inward, drawing him deeper into its core, past the roar, past the rage, into a silence that was far more terrifying than any sound. And in that awful silence, he felt it, a memory that was not his own, but the very essence of the unleashed horror flooded his vanishing awareness, a memory of betrayal, a memory of a binding millennia old, a memory of Eliyahu's distant ancestors. They weren't just the authors of the Torah, not just seekers of the Shekinah. They were the ones who had trapped this entity. The Torah code, the meticulous life, the desperate search, the Yeshua, the demon, the entity, the black hole, the artist, every layer of illusion, every twist, every cosmic dance had been a sophisticated, agonizingly slow process. Not to free this horror, not to set it upon the universe, but to prepare Eliyahu, to refine his essence, to turn him into the ultimate lure, a living, breathing, perfect bait. The artist hadn't failed to comprehend an apocalypse. They had failed to comprehend the true ancient grudge. The white light solidified, turning into an unbearable weight, binding Eliyahu, transforming him into a living, conscious focal point. The horror, immense and formless, spoke then, its voice not a roar, but a deep, resonant hum, a vibration that promised utter, eternal retribution. "You brought me forth, son of Judah," it hummed. its ancient malice directed solely at Eliyahu, to witness my release. But you also carry the stain. The blood of those who bound me runs in your veins. You are the echo. And now, you are the first repayment. The colossal entity stretching across the cosmos didn't move to destroy the universe. It simply focused its unimaginable ancient rage through Eliyahu, a living weapon at the swirling, fractured presence of the artist, who screamed in a newly dawning absolute horror, not of the apocalypse, but of the vengeance that was about to be unleashed upon them, using Eliyahu as the conduit. Eliyahu was not the audience, not the detonator. He was the cursed instrument, eternally bound to deliver the ancient wrath he had unwittingly awakened, not upon the cosmos, but upon the very architects of his agonizing, beautiful illusion. And the show for the artist was just beginning. Eliyahu, the cursed instrument, felt the torrent of ancient wrath surge through his core, a geyser of pure liquid vengeance. The colossal horror, now fully awakened, its formless mass eclipsing galaxies, didn't tear at the cosmos. No, its unimaginable focus drilled inward, a gaze of boundless fury fixed directly on Eliyahu. His very essence became the conduit, stretching, pulling, channeling this primordial vengeance towards its true target, the artist, the architect of his agonizing illusion. The swirling fractals of the artist, once so beautifully complex, now writhed, a tangled knot of broken geometry, screaming a silent shriek of absolute dawning horror. No, this wasn't part of the performance. The chimes of their voice, once amused, now fractured, shattered into desperate, echoing cries of pure, unadulterated terror. They had crafted the ultimate trap, the perfect spectator, only to become the victim of their own meticulous design. The white light, the rage that flowed through Eliyahu struck the artist like a cosmic hammer. Their kaleidoscopic patterns didn't just break, they dissolved, unraveling into nothingness, their carefully constructed reality collapsing in on itself. The universe, which had been their grand stage, buckled, not under an external threat, but from the implosion of the very consciousness that had woven its endless deceptions. Eliyahu felt the artist's despair, a cold, bitter taste, as it was ripped apart, absorbed by the very wrath it had unknowingly unleashed. This wasn't the end of creation, not an apocalypse for the stars. This was a targeted, surgical strike, a cleansing fire unleashed by a prisoner finally free, its ancient grudge fulfilled, not by widespread destruction, but by the absolute annihilation of its torturer, the artist itself. The immense horror its vengeance spent began to slowly, terrifyingly refocus its gaze outward. The rage once channeled receded, leaving behind a profound, terrifying emptiness, a void far greater than the one Eliyahu had ever carried. And within this infinite, silent expanse, Eliyahu remained. Not consumed, not destroyed, but bound. His consciousness, refined by a lifetime of manufactured yearning, was a singular, agonizing point of perception within the horror's newly calmed, yet still ancient and incomprehensible being. He was not a savior, not a sacrifice, not even a simple death. He was the witness, permanently tethered, forced to perceive the universe through the eyes of pure, ancient indifference. His entire life, the Torah, the void, the Yeshua, the demons, the black hole, the artist, every single twist, every layer of manufactured truth had merely been the process to create this perfect, eternal observer. The final, terrifying punchline, And as the horror turned its attention to the vast, indifferent cosmos, Eliyahu felt a new emptiness, colder than any he had known, settled deep within his trapped awareness. The universe stretched before them, boundless and silent. His show, the true master's show, had finally begun. But wait! Before you even think about catching your breath after that mind-bending, universe-shattering conclusion, listen up. This isn't just another story. This is a journey we shared, a bond we forged through cosmic terror and unbelievable revelations. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next sagas, because trust me, the universe holds more secrets, and we're just getting started. Did that ending shatter your reality? Then smash the like button now to show the strength of our community. Let's make this video explode across the digital cosmos. And don't even think about holding back. Flood the comments with your raw, unfiltered reactions to this finale. What did you feel? What did you see? Let your voice be heard. And finally, for the true fans, for those who felt every chilling word, don't wait another second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this ending, who need to have their minds absolutely blown. This isn't just a video, it's an event, and you're part of the inner circle. Let's shake the very foundations of YouTube.